Hello, my name is Julie Hoskins, and I would like to share a little bit with you about Jean Piaget. Piaget was born in Switzerland in 1896, and he passed away in Switzerland in 1980. The American Psychological Association has categorized him as a developmental psychologist. And Piaget is well known for his cognitive development theory. And in this theory, there is a stage concept, and there's also a principle of equilibration. In his stage concept, there are 4 stages. Each stage is given a certain age restriction. And what he's really talking about in these stages is how the brain is developing. In his principle of equilibration, he's referring back to his stages, his stage theory, but he's talking about in this principle about how people acquire knowledge, how they assemble a knowledge, and they do this by accommodating and assimilating. For instance, as a student or a child is interacting with their environment, they create this image, a mental image. And as they experience new, challenging, frustrating experiences, they will take that new experience, that challenging experience, and accommodate that information and assimilate it with their existing mental picture. And this happens back and forth with concrete objects, people. Nothing is abstract at this point in time, but it's just back and forth. Always their mental image is changing because it is accommodating and assimilating new information, frustration, until they get to the age of 6th grade. Somewhere between 6th grade and 9th grade, they come to a point where their brain is fully developed, as per Piaget comments on that this is the final stage, and they're able to understand these abstract ideas. And Piaget commented in his stage concept that they're able to actually think more like an adult. And so in his principle, he's talking about how they come to a point in time where they're able to think about abstract ideas, and rather than concrete, they're able to talk about what they're thinking about abstract ideas. They're able to collaborate with others about what they're thinking about ideas that are not concrete. And so as I was thinking about his ideas, I was thinking about the constructivists and how they have really taken some of Piaget's ideas and to incorporate it into their thoughts and ideas. For instance, student-centered education is coming from Piaget. He's talking about how students are, what they're going through in each stage, and about their interest, about their experiences, about their frustrations, and how they're assembling this information. And so it's really student-centered rather than teacher-centered. Another thing I noticed is that the productive struggle is coming from Piaget when he's talking about assimilating, accommodating, assimilating, creating these new images in their mental images. That I learned this from my math class, that to really give students time taking in new information and being able to construct a new mental image so that they can keep that information with them and retain it. Another thing I noticed is that the constructivists talked about that a student can demonstrate their thinking. Now, this idea comes from Piaget because he talked about our mental pictures that we're developing in our minds. And students can actually, they can draw pictures, they can give visual representations, they can do graphic organizers, they can tell us what they're thinking, and they can do this um, so that we can learn from them. Also, so teachers can see if there's any misconceptions that they have about what they're learning at that point in time. And so these ideas are the things that I noticed that Piaget was he was already talking about this, and that the constructivists were really gaining insight from him. Well, I looked at Thomas P. Jandris and the things that he has to say, and he mentioned that researchers, when they're looking at his stage concept, that really they're that when they're looking at his stage concept, that they talk about that they don't agree with the age restrictions that he applies to the stages, but they do agree that something is taking place with the brain. It is changing. Another thing is that the researchers do not agree with his stage 3, which is the concrete operational stage. Piaget mentioned that this is a time where they have higher level thinking, but it's still concrete, about concrete things, objects, people, things that they can understand. And so the researchers have stated that research does not support this idea of higher thinking, or that they can only think about concrete items at this time between the ages of 7 to 11. The other thing is that John just mentioned is that Piaget has really influenced early childhood education. Now, as I was thinking about this for myself, a critique for myself, I was thinking, if you ever worked with babies, toddlers, twos, and preschool, you're very familiar with the ages and stages handout. And this is really coming from Piaget about what children and babies are really like, what their mind is like, what they can do. Another thing I noticed is that in his stage 4, he talked about that this is the final form of their brain development. And I am questioning, he said from 6th grade to 9th grade that this is the final form. And I'm questioning this because I've read some research that our brain is not fully developed until we are 25 years old. And so I question too about the age restriction that he placed on this. I'm going to leave you with a quote, and from Piaget. He said, "To understand is to invent, or to reconstruct by reinventing." And this really does give us a glimpse into what Piaget was thinking, and how the constructivists have really taken on his ideas about constructing knowledge. These are a list of my resources for this presentation. Thank you very much.